You are the first signing to Ishkode Records. So why don't we start there? How did that come about? And how long has it been?
So I met them last year. I think it was still in lockdown, and I saw like this ad on social media, like apply to play the International Indigenous Music Summit. And so, yeah, I ended up applying, and Amanda and Shoshona, who founded the label, worked with the summit, but then they were also starting this brand new label. So that's kind of where we met. And
so that's very serendipitous. They were looking to start this label, and then they saw you, and it was like stars aligned. Let's make this happen.
I almost didn't even put in that application, to be honest. Like I was like paying off student debt, I think, at the time. So I was like being a bit cheap, and I was like, I don't want to pay the application fee. And I think I was dabbling in cryptocurrency at the same time. I
kind of want to ask you about that, but I'm not going to because I'm just going to get confused.
Okay. Well, anyways, I had like $10 that wasn't invested, quote unquote, into a coin. So I like, I saw like this exchange. It was like, oh, Asscoin, I'll buy that. And then I went for a bike ride, and I was like, I wonder how Asscoin is doing, and it jumped up like 2,800%. So I sold it and came back, and I was like, well, I guess I can do this summit now. So I put the application in.
Are we thanking cryptocurrency right now for your success?
we're thanking Bitcoin for my music career.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah. Now, are you comfortable talking about your near-death experience that you had before you moved here to Toronto? I've done my research, and I heard that you broke through ice. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. Like that was like probably the last of multiple near-death experiences with that job. I used to kind of work in the wilderness, and so like we'd kind of be in these remote places where a lot of places, like if you can drive, you'd have to like kind of fly to them. And so,
is this in Ontario, or?
Yeah, this is like far northern Ontario. I was working, and we all worked by ourselves. And so I was like snowshoeing across this frozen river, and then broke through. But we all like work with axes, and so like I stuck my axe into the ice and kind of pulled myself across. But like the ice was still breaking, so it was like breaking as I was like pulling myself, and you can kind of feel the river. And I was wearing snowshoes, so it's like if you go under, you can't really swim, and you're under ice. So yeah, I think that was kind of the last of a few.
That's a turning point, I'm sure, where you're like, what am I doing? Like, I should not be doing this job anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so like I got to the other side, and I started a fire, and I kind of dried my stuff off, and like I'd like snowshoe really far back to camp, and 3 months later I bought a plane ticket and I moved to Toronto.
So that was it. That was kind of like a turning point for you then.
Yeah, one of those moments where it's, what am I doing? Like, life is fragile, and what am I doing? Like, this job that I don't care for, and I want to be playing music, so why am I not doing that? So
you went to school for journalism, is that correct? And why did you go the music route? I did radio, and I could have done journalism. So I'm like, you did the journalism, you completed the program. This was in where is this, Northern Ontario?
No, I left Northern Ontario, and I came to Toronto to play music, but then I was like, my grandmother was always kind of like, you're going to have to work 10 times as hard to get half as much. So it's like, I was always kind of figured I should have like a plan B. And so I'd applied to actually journalism, nursing, and massage therapy, and I'd gotten to them all. And so I kind of didn't know what to take. But I think journalism kind of didn't seem as far of a stretch from music, where it's still like storytelling.
Yes,
and there's like
agreed.
So
it's where anybody who is not talented enough to be a musician goes, like myself.
There's actually surprisingly quite a few musicians in journalism. Have you heard of Newsapalooza?
Yes, I have.
So I got to play with Lisa Lil Flam in a band.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's sweet. Oh, my God, look at that. Now, how much of your upbringing do you incorporate in your music? I know that's really important to you.
I think music was a part of my upbringing. I kind of had absent parents, I guess. So like music was kind of something I always kind of gravitated to kind of have an outlet to kind of, break down and process the world around me, I guess. So music has always been kind of like a second parent almost. So yeah, you know, I feel like music a lot of the time, like my songs just start as me just kind of being pretty vulnerable and kind of, yeah, you know, yelling emotions into a mic, and it's kind of crazy that that's my profession now, and I, you know, people pay tickets to come see it.
People love when others are vulnerable and have a lot of stories to tell in such a beautiful and artistic way, and that's what you're doing. Where does Aysanabee come from?
Yeah, so Aysanabee, it's my family name. So like half of my family are Anishinaabe, which is the original version. Aysanabee is the westernized version.
Okay.
So my mother actually changed my last name when I was born because she thought it'd be easier in life for me if I, you know, didn't have an Indigenous last name on resumes and stuff, and so kind of taking Aysanabee back and it's kind of like a, you know, a part of my journey.
How did she react to that?
Oh yeah, no, she was thrilled.
She was, yeah.
Yeah, she's. I think, you know, growing up in a lot of like the northern towns, there's a lot of, you know, the relationship with Indigenous people isn't the best in a lot of these smaller towns, and so, you know, I grew up with the matriarchs of my family, kind of, you know, like my mother taking the last name away and saying like it's better for you this way, you know, like kind of growing up with that, kind of like that your heritage should be something to hide or something you should be afraid of, you know, like you know, I grew up in a town where you know, Indigenous students would like turn up in the river, and there would be no investigations, and you know, it'd be, oh, they're just, you know, there's just really troubled relationships in the north.
Yes, which we're all learning about. What is something that is really important to you that you hope translates to your fans through your music?
You know what? I think one thing I'm really excited about with this album is like I got to be very true with this album and very kind of tell a story I wanted to tell and how I wanted to tell it. And you know, when I was making it, I wasn't making it with like an audience in mind. I guess I didn't really think many people would hear it, to be honest. So just being kind of able to do that and to kind of see it work, and it doesn't kind of have to be, you know, completely, you know, a product or something. You know what I mean? Art can still be art and can still be very meaningful and thoughtful.
And it's not contrived. It's not something that a group has put together. It's just you. It's from your heart. Like that's amazing that you made this album, and it's for you, right? It's maybe for your family, for your close friends. And then all of a sudden now it's like everyone's going to be hearing that. Like that's so wonderful. That's really special. When does the album come out?
November 4th.
November 4th. And there's going to be a release party?
Yeah. We're doing a release party November 8th at the Rivoli.
Now, before you go, can you tell me about your song Nomads?
Yeah. Nomads is the final track off the album. And these are all the songs are based off of these conversations I had with my grandfather over the first year of the pandemic. So I kind of, it wasn't an album at the start. It was kind of just me almost interviewing my grandfather for a year while we were both kind of locked down like 1,000 kilometers apart. And we talked about like his life in Sandy Lake First Nation, growing up on the trap line with his brothers and sisters, but we had never actually ever talked about his experience in residential school and, meeting my grandmother there and falling in love with her and them kind of eloping after that. So like all these kind of stories and kind of being that vulnerable was kind of new to the both of us. So we kind of got really close over that first year and I guess listening back to those interviews at the end of 2020, I ended up writing one song and then I wrote two songs and then wrote an album, and they're all kind of almost all kind of in the style of kind of call and response. Like it's going to be a mixture of kind of clips from these conversations and the kind of the songs that follow them. So Nomads for sure is kind of this kind of melancholic, but also kind of hopeful, triumphant track, and I think that was kind of where I was when I finished the album, which is kind of like, I got to record our our family story, at least like a small part of it, and kind of, immortalize it a little bit. A lot of the Indigenous history is kind of oral, right? So a lot of it kind of gets lost over time. So being able to kind of capture something and make like a little time capsule or something is kind of pretty special. Even
knowing that there's all of that information that you've been able to condense into, a single and trickle into a whole record, like that's a lot. Was your grandfather one of the first people that listened to it?
Yeah. I'd played him some of the demos, and I mean, he's family, so
bias a little bit.
No, he was super thrilled. But like when I got to work with Hilker Kudus, and I got to work with this amazing team of musicians, and it was able to kind of play him some more mastered tracks was kind of super special, because like I remember when I went up to Thunder Bay where he's living, and I picked him up and we were driving around, and I just kind of put on a track, and I didn't even kind of tell him, and it's just.
I hope you recorded that.
No,
did you?
I didn't.
That reaction.
I know, because like
I don't even know either. I can picture it.
No, that was just for me, I guess. But I played the track, and I still think like a lot of people are kind of surprised that like I kind of don't sound how I talk.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And so my grandfather also kind of like, he didn't realize it was the track until like it was like the one song where I actually used like a sample of him talking, and then he was just kind of like, oh, that's me on the radio.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's so great.
Yeah. So that's Nomads. I actually played that track